It is an honor to be here with this distinguished panel and with Jan Hutchins. I read a quote that stuck with me the other day, and I think it's really apropos to what job training does. Today's pain is tomorrow's masterpiece. Today's pain is tomorrow's masterpiece. And I thought about how that has worked in terms of my own life. You know, there have been some times when I've had some real struggles. I mean, I want to talk about, you mentioned not a genuine black man. The way that whole thing came to be is I was in a period where I was struggling. I was struggling for money. I was a single dad, home alone with 3 kids. And I wanted to do something. I wanted to write something, but I had no idea what to write about. So I got this idea from the great Carl Reiner. I had a chance to talk to Carl Reiner. And he said to me, find the piece of ground that you alone stand on and write from there. And I thought, well, what's my piece of ground, you know? So one day I'm at KGO Radio, where I'm doing a weekend show, and I'd been out on the road for a couple weeks, and I come back, and there's all this mail piled up. And in talk radio, mail that comes to the physical post office comes from 2 sources, old ladies and whack jobs. That's it. Nobody else writes it. Just old ladies and kooks, which makes the mail kind of easy to sort through. So I'm going through the stack of mail, old lady, death threat, old lady, death threat. Ooh, death threat from an old lady. Then I come across one that's typed with an actual typewriter. I'm thinking, what antique shop did this come from? What? So I open this thing, and it's an unsigned typewritten letter, and it simply says, as an African American, I'm disgusted every time I hear your voice because you are not a genuine black man. I thought, no more calls, we have a winner. Because for some reason, people have said that to me a lot in my life. And I thought, why do people say that? Is it because how I dress, how I talk, because I like watching reruns of Frasier on TV? So I go through this whole litany, okay? I don't talk ghetto. When I hear the word axe, I think of it as a noun. It's not a verb. I'm going to go axe my mother. What are you, Lizzie Borden? I can't swim, that's black. Can't play basketball either, which is not even male, really, is it? I don't talk back to the screen at the movie theater. That's a black phenomenon, huh? Well, don't go up in there, he hiding up in there, he got a gun up in there, he can't hear you. So I look at this thing, I think, why do people say that to me? And I realize it's because, you know, from the age of 8, my family, at the age of 8, my family moved from Hayward, California to San Leandro in 1972 at a time when it was 99.99% white and considered one of the most racist suburbs in America. 99.99% white. Ivory Soap looked at that number and went, wow. So I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a story about what it means to be different, about what it means to be the only one, because at some point in your life, you are the only one. You're the only black, the only white, the only man, the only woman, the only Jew, the only Muslim, the only Christian, whatever. You're the only one. There's some situations where you're going to find yourself where you're the only one of your kind. And how do you navigate those waters when you are the only one, where you're the one who's different? So I decided that's what I'm going to do. So I walked my kids to school every morning, and then I would sit at this little cafe by my house, and number 2 wood pencils and marble composition notebooks, and I wrote down every story I could think about what it was like, you know, to grow up to be the only one, you know, the taunts, and you know, I grew up with adults driving down the street yelling the N-word out the car window at me, and there was housing discrimination that was just rampant. You know, they tried to evict us on several occasions. And my mother would not give up. My mother was what black folks call sedity. My mother was from Birmingham, Alabama, but told people she was from Providence, Rhode Island. Because it sounded better. It was my mom and my grandma, and my grandma was from Birmingham, and she was just no nonsense. Now, I'll tell you a story that illustrates grandma perfectly. I was 16 years old, and high school yearbook comes out, and I come home from school with this thing because I'm all upset because there's a horrible picture of me in the yearbook, and when you're 16, that's like the most important thing in the world, right? So I come home with this thing, oh, Grandma, look at this picture, it's awful, it's horrible, it's terrible. And she says, well, the camera can't take nothing but what's in front of it. What you expect the camera to do? Thank you for your kind support. So I moved there with them, and somehow these two women raised me and my four sisters, and they were able to to keep the wolves at bay, and somehow we made it through. My mom died when I was 14 years old, and it was just grandma and us, and somehow we managed to make it through. And so I wrote this play, and it was supposed to be 6 weeks, and it'd be 6 weeks, and I'll be on to something else, and. First night, I think 9 people came. The next night there were like 15, and then the following week it started to sell out. It ran for the next 7 years here in the Bay Area and in Los Angeles and off Broadway. And who knew? Today's pain, tomorrow's masterpiece. Another really painful period in my life. Let's see, I think I was here, the last time I was here was in 2007, as I recall. And this was really kind of the highlight of that year for me, being here, because shortly afterwards, things just kind of went to hell in a handbasket. My grandma died suddenly. My little sister, my baby sister, was 8 months pregnant, and the baby was dead. And she had to give birth to a baby who was not alive. Then wife took off, decided she didn't want to be married anymore. Then I had a car accident, and I had a spinal cord issue where the disc in my neck was pressed against the spinal column, and they said if they didn't operate immediately, I was going to be a quadriplegic. So I have this, and I'm on the couch by myself for 3 months in a neck brace because I couldn't get up, couldn't walk, I had to stay in a neck brace. Just with Vicodin and DVDs of Everybody Loves Raymond. That's what I did for that 3 months. And I got, I've been a depressive since I was a kid. I suffered from depression ever since the time I was a little boy. And it got bad. It got really, really bad. And it got to the point where I decided I wanted to end it. It was so depressed that that's what I wanted to do. And I went to a gun shop, and I bought a gun, a .32 caliber Beretta Tomcat. And there was a 10-day waiting period, there is in the state of California, before you can get a firearm. And about 6 days into this wait, I talked to my parish priest, and I had an epiphany, when he told me to try to walk this labyrinth. I can barely walk, but he says, walk this labyrinth at Mercy Center in Burlingame, and just ponder the question, why are you so depressed? Why you want to do this? And I realized it was because I thought that everything that had happened, all these horrible, horrible things, like out of the book of Job, were brought on me because I was a bad person, because it was my fault, And once I realized that that's ridiculous, that there's there's not divine retribution, life has its ups and life has its downs, I came out of it. I came through it. And that experience, I thought about doing something with this is 2007, so 6 years ago. So I thought for about 4.5 years about doing something with this, but I didn't know what to do until some good friends of mine had a nephew who, 15 years old, was so depressed he laid down in front of the railroad tracks in Oakley. And I said, okay, I got to tell this story so maybe I can get people, if you're feeling that way, to talk to somebody, tell somebody. So I wrote this show, The Waiting Period, and same kind of thing, couple-of-week run. I didn't know what was going to happen. The subject matter, it's funny, but it's also heavy, and I didn't know what was going to happen with it. And folks have been very kind, press is very kind, and it's been running now we're in our 15th month with that show in San Francisco. And the great thing is that folks who don't, the depression is the last stigmatized disease in America. That's the last disease that we do not talk about. I can guarantee that there are, statistically, 20% of you are suffering from it. And 20% of you are on something, and probably the rest of us probably should be on something. But again, it's today's pain is tomorrow's masterpiece. Again, who knew? And that's the way this all ties together is that's what Job Train does. When I hear the stories I heard 6 years ago, and the stories I'm hearing today, about some of the extraordinary people who go through Job Train, go through that program, and the rough times that they had in order to get there. Job Train takes today's pain and creates masterpieces. So please continue to support this wonderful program, this wonderful organization, and thank you very, very much for having me.